what event in David's life does the chronicler skip, and why might he have done so? This is a question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Chronicles on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Chronicles chapter 20, verses 1 to 8. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 1 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Chronicles chapter 20, beginning of verse 1. It happened in the spring of the year, at the times when kings go to battle, that Joab led out the armed forces and ravaged the country of the people of Ammon, and came and besieged Rabbah. But David stayed at Jerusalem. And Joab defeated Rabbah and overthrew it. Then David took the king's crown from his head, and found it to weigh a talent of gold, and there were precious stones in it. And it was set on David's head. Also he brought out the spoil of the city in great abundance. And he brought out the people who were in it, and put them to work with saws, with iron picks, and with axes. So David did to all the cities of the people of Ammon. Then David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. Now it happened afterward that war broke out at Gezer with the Philistines, at which time Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Sippai, who was one of the sons of the giants. And they were subdued. Again there was war with the Philistines, and Elhanan the son of Jair killed Lamai the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Yet again there was war at Gath, and there was a man of great stature with 24 fingers and toes, 6 on each hand and 6 on each foot, and he also was born to the giant. So when he defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shimei, David's brother, killed him. These were born to the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. It is important that we remember that the events here in chapter 20 directly connect with the events at the end of chapter 19, though they take place at a different time. Remember that David and Israel had gone to battle with the Ammonites and defeated them, but they didn't conquer them to the extent of ruling over them. That will come as a result of this year's battles. What David had done by this point is go up and defeat the Syrians who helped the Ammonites, making them vassals or tributaries of David. This had the effect that the Assyrians would no longer come and help the Ammonites in battle, an important point to remember. Time has now shifted to the spring of the next year. This time of the year, when the temperatures are warmer, is typically the time when battles begin between warring nations. And in that time period, as we've seen thus far in our study of 1 Samuel, it was customary for the king to lead his nation into battle. Saul had done that in 1 Samuel, and David has done that while king as well. This time, though, for whatever reason, David decided not to go out to battle the Ammonites, instead deciding to remain in Jerusalem, while sending his general Joab to lead the army as it besieged Rabbah, Ammon's capital. What we must understand about this war with the Ammonites is this. This was not a war that took days to complete, or even weeks. It took months, likely most of this year, to complete. Ultimately, 2 Samuel 12 tells us that the way that Joab provided victory is that he cut off the city's water supply. But Joab knew that victory was usually given to the king, and so Joab sent messengers to David to bring a contingent of soldiers with him and defeat the city. David took the crown of the king of the Ammonites from his head, a valuable crown to say the least, and placed it on his own head. This meant that David was now the ruler of the Ammonites, making the people his servants. He made them work with saws, iron picks, iron axes, and in brick-making, hard labor indeed, a punishment for continually attacking Israel and trying to take land that was rightfully Israel's. David also took from the spoils of the people of Ammon, further enriching himself and further expanding Israel's influence. But avid readers of the Bible know that there was more to the story than the chronicler records for us, for it is during this war that David commits adultery with Bathsheba, which is what he was doing in Jerusalem, and it is during this war that Uriah the Hittite dies at the secret command of David. Now to us, these seem like pretty important events in David's life. Why would the chronicler leave them out? Is it because he is covering up David's sin? No, for the chronicler already told us about David's sin concerning moving the Ark of the Covenant. And David's sin with the census is coming in chapter 21, so the chronicler is not trying to cover up David's sin. So why skip it then? It likely has to do with the focus of the chronicler. As we've seen thus far, the chronicler's focus is presenting David as a mighty king in Israel, one who organized the temple worship. The battles mentioned in this book highlight David as that mighty king. And the work David did in setting up the temple worship into what it would become also showed him as a mighty king, one whom God was with. When you stop and think about it for a moment, though, the sins that were mentioned by the chronicler concerning David, what did both have in common? They were somehow involved with the organization of the temple worship. The sin surrounding the Ark of the Covenant was committed when David tried to unite Israel's worship in Jerusalem without seeking God's guidance first. And then in the next chapter, with David's sin involving the census, what is going to be the result of that? The place where David offers his sacrifices of repentance to God is located in the very land that will be purchased to build the temple on. So both of those events needed to be mentioned in furtherance of the narrative being presented. David's sin with Bathsheba was a private sin, one that in the immediate term affected David and David alone. Now yes, it would eventually lead to his overthrow by Absalom, but even that event is not mentioned by the chronicler. The chronicler is not giving us a detailed history of David's reign, but one focused especially on the temple worship. And since David's sin with Bathsheba and the aftermath of it doesn't really advance that narrative, that is likely why it is omitted. However, the Jews returning from captivity would have known about it, but from what we call 2 Samuel. So David's sin with Bathsheba isn't being overlooked, just not focused on here in 1 Chronicles. Coming out of verses 4 to 8, and we get events that happen after David's war with the Ammonites. When, we're not entirely sure, but what we do know is that the event likely occurs not too long after the war with the Ammonites, meaning that David would be in his late 40s here. Recall from earlier in David's reign that he had subjugated the Philistines. He didn't, though, utterly destroy them, and by this time, if our chronology is correct, about 10 years has passed, and so it is only natural that the Philistines try to break free of David's clutches. The chronicler only gives us a short summary of the events of these battles, however, so if you want a more detailed look, we suggest that you go back and watch Lesson 52 of our 2 Samuel series, which can be found at eastendchurch.org under the Media pull-down menu and the WTTB English podcast link. What the chronicler does tell us is one of the battles takes place at Gezer. In 2 Samuel 21, the place is referred to as Gob, a place we don't know the location of. Why is there a difference in cities mentioned? Well, one possibility is that the name of the city had changed between the writing of Samuel and Chronicles, due to an approximate 400-year gap in the writing of each book. Or it could simply be that either there is a later copyist error in one or the other book that leads to two different names, meaning we can't be entirely sure as to which one is correct. Whatever the case, we know it's one of these two solutions, either of which does not diminish the fact that the original was correct, as it was inspired of God. And in the end, exactly where the Philistine territory this took place is not what is important. It's what took place there that is. And what we find took place is that Sibbecai, the Hushathite, killed Sippai, another one of the Philistine giants. That Israel was defeating these giants is a testament to their faith in God, faith that would have been instilled in them by David. For remember, when Goliath had come against them, all Israel was afraid. At another battle, Elhanan, the son of Jair, killed the brother of Goliath. And after this, we have an account of another giant who was killed by Jonathan, the son of Shimeah, meaning that he was David's nephew. The giant that Jonathan killed was rather notable, for he had 6 fingers on both hands and 6 toes on both feet. Now yes, this would be a birth defect and out of the ordinary, but this is exactly why it is included here in 1 Chronicles chapter 20. These extra digits, though, didn't save this giant, and he too died. In all, these giants fell by the hand of David and his men, and the Philistines were again subdued. Now, yes, David didn't actually kill anyone, but as king and leader, David does get the credit for what his army does, a practice that still exists even to this day. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Chronicles chapter 22, verses 1 to 1 Chronicles chapter 21, verses 1 to 13, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.